So based on sitting down with guests who are from all these walks of life, doing all these different things, have you had Eureka moments where they start going through an experience they had where they learned something and maybe learned how to do X, something really well, that then you're like, well, wait a second. I had something like that similar too, and maybe I could utilize that in the future I'm making something up right now, but by using that to do something? Or is it mostly like you're picking up a lot of new things from people and trying to then integrate it in your life, like the positive things?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think about it like, how I think about podcasting is that the good stuff will stick. And so I'm taking in and you're taking in so much information from people that it's like, whatever comes to the surface, like meditating, for example, is something that's stuck for me. And I was doing it before, but it's like, if it sticks, that's what it's all about, right? Like, I don't think about, I don't know. Like, I don't know what examples come to mind from what you're talking about.
I think sometimes, I mean, for me personally, I may hear like a musician talk about music, which I love music, right? But and I speak from experience, this is a good example. Like when I talk with guys like Ashton Larold, when I talk with someone like Jufu early on, the ways that these guys are artists and they've had some success too. Like the ways that they relate to music and how notes play and things happen. Mm-hmm. Like in another universe, I'm doing that too. And I never was in touch with that. And when they start speaking about it on here, I realize I fully understand their language. Mm. It's like I can't read the music, but I can play the notes. You know what I mean? Like that's a little bit of a convoluted way of putting it, but I have been able, like from my seat, to get in touch with other little things that maybe I'm decent at that I would have never given myself any credit for, just based on how the other person is describing these things to me. It's kind of a meta thing to think about, but that to me is so cool because it's like like I get something out of it because I'm like, wait, this person, shit, this is like a shrink session. And they're not trying to do it. They're just telling me their experience. And now I'm like, oh, maybe, you know what? Maybe I'll work with that. And like I can tell you from experience on that one, like that took my clips and my content I make to a whole new level because I started to get in touch with the fact that like I could feel it.
Wow.
Like it's there. And I always thought everyone had that. So I never recognized that I had it at all. You understand? Like it's one of those things where you don't think like, ooh, maybe there's one little thing my brain can process a little better than the average person. You don't at least I don't think like that ever. But in speaking to other people, once they like, it's almost like they're telling me like, hey, you can be comfortable with thinking this if you're catching my drift right now. They're not telling me that, but they're insinuating that. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And I don't think it's any coincidence that wasn't like the first viral clip I ever did, but the most important clip I ever made from this, which I would do way better today, but it's beautiful to look back on, like how it came together, was with Ashton Larold, with something he said in there. And like I felt the notes, the music, and what he was saying.
Wow. That's really cool. Nothing like that has ever happened to me. But that is a fascinating thing. What about that? Like did you know in that moment like things were different?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like wait, in the moment of the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes. I don't know, especially when people are like really good, when they're amazing communicators.
Yeah.
And I can just tell, like I don't have to do a goddamn thing. I'm just sitting back here just like letting them rip. And I just get to like, it's almost like you're sounding out the words in your head that they're saying because they're just using these beautiful images. And you know what? I don't want to like cheat, but in a way it's got to be related to like meditation. It's definitely not the same thing, but that might be like my little early taste of meditation. That's why I got to try this because you're more, you know, especially with the headphones in and everything. We talked about that earlier, but like you're more in touch with it. And then God forbid you're editing it back and you get to hear it again and you're like, whoa, yeah. And you still get the hair on your skin to stand up. You're like, oh, that was real. Because that was happening when it was happening. It's happening again. And I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll sit with that for a while. And I'll be like, damn, like, why did it? I'll ask myself, like, why did that really vibe with me right there? Was it just a simple story or were they saying something else that I could relate to?
What do you think goosebumps are?
It's such a good question, man. I think I don't want to sound like philosophical. I think Goosebumps, I'm going to say this in the simplest, stupidest way possible. I think it's probably like nature's way of telling you something's different. Something different is happening, and not only is it okay, it's great. And it can be for different reasons. But you can get goosebumps out of fear. You can get goosebumps out of happiness. You can get goosebumps out of sadness. You can get goosebumps out of catharsis. You can get goosebumps out of nostalgia. These are all very different emotions. Some of them are related, but some of them are diametrically opposed. But you can use them for all of things. To use fear as an example there, fear is a gift. My friend, Special Agent Jim DiOrio, has always said that. And that's something he's dealt with doing crazy things in his life. And I think about this a lot. And when I hear other guests maybe not say those words, but they're saying it, pops in my head. Like, it's a gift not because you should be this tough guy. It's like, oh, I'm not afraid of anything. You should be aware that you are human and there are things you fear. And can you have the courage to stand in there and face it, right? So maybe if you get goosebumps from something like that, it's your body saying to yourself, are you gonna stay? You're going to go. And how you use those goosebumps could be different. But then, my favorite goosebumps are when it's like, it's some sort of emotional nostalgia for sure. Yeah. Like when I feel that, and it can take you back to a different time in your life, and someone was so magical that they were able to say something to do that to you. That's like, even if it's something they say that you didn't do, you can't relate to, but it reminds you of something and you feel like you were there in their thing because of how they're describing it. That is the coolest. And I don't just say that because I'm a podcaster. I would challenge people listening right now to think about their conversations they have. And I'll bet there's a subset of people out there who feel the same way, just sitting across from someone off camera, having a conversation in their life when something like that happens and they feel that. I bet they would feel a similar way.
I think it's truth. I think the reason why your hairs light up is because your body is recognizing truth. And maybe a truth that you haven't looked at in a while, or it's giving you a new perspective for something. At least that's my take on it at this moment.
That's perfect. I think that's exactly what it is. I might use that. It's probably better. Are you a religious guy?
Not religious, very spiritual.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
It means that I don't subscribe to Christianity, Islam, Judaism. None of those like really resonate with me at a deep level, but I believe that there's truths in all of them. And I think the parts of it that are true, to me at least, is like love. They all point to love in some way. And I think listening is love. I think laughing is love. And I think that like really connecting with another human being that includes yourself, that's love as well. And so, yeah, I think that I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. And I do have a heavy belief in like a God, and whether that God is like within us or around us, or what if we're all God ourselves? Like,
what do you mean if we're all God ourselves?
I think Peter Crone was quoting somebody when he said, if someone was God and wanted to hide, what would be the best place to hide? Inside. It's like, if you really think about that and getting in touch with yourself, like if you really meditate, not that, you think you're all powerful or anything like, but like we're all very powerful, and we all like don't realize the extent of our power. And if you really sit with nothingness, like there is some energy that comes to the forefront. And so, I don't know, I think there's a possibility that like there's God within all living things.
Well, what do you think happens when we die?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah. Because no one, I guess, really knows.
Yeah. No, I'm really interested in this topic, and I think Raymond Moody's got a great book worth checking out.
Who's that? Is he just an author or?
He's a doctor.
Got it.
But I think the book is around a bunch of different people who have died and come back to life. So they were physically pronounced dead, and it's remarkable, like how similar the stories are that people say. Like a lot of them witness like being out of body, that they could witness themselves from like the corner of the room. Yeah, I have no idea what happens, but I'm fascinated by it, and I think that, you know, if you stumbled across an iPhone in the middle of a forest, you'd be like, this is pretty cool. Who created that? If you stumbled across a human, why would you think any differently? Human brain is more intelligent than an iPhone in many respects, in terms of what we can pick up and how we can communicate with each other. Like, are we really so naive to think that didn't come from anywhere?
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.